This title of my presentation, Digital Signature, was actually suggested by one of my daughters. I have 5 children. I'm very proud of all of them. They're all grown, and I have 9 grandchildren. My oldest daughter, Sabrina, I was explaining to her what it was I wanted to convey, and she came up with this title, Digital Signature, and I kind of massaged the subtitle, Signs of the Creator in Technology. So, what's the relationship between creation and technology? I teach computer science at Concordia University, Wisconsin, and I also teach a science course there. So I teach a bunch of tech, and the science course I teach is cosmogony, the science of origins. You've heard of Apple Pay? You've heard of these things where you just, Well, actually what Apple Pay is, Adam and Eve ate it, and boy, are we paying for it. What's the connection? I mean, Dave tried to bring a little bit of that out there, but he missed something important. What's the connection between computer science and creation? Well, it's not as obvious. We all know the original sin. We all know Adam and Eve's original sin. But are you aware of their second major sin? You are not. Their second major sin was using technology to perform arithmetic. You're saying, what? Yes, you can read about it for yourself explicitly in Genesis 9, verse 7. God clearly said, as for you, be fruitful and increase in number, multiply on the face of the earth. Don't use technology to multiply. Wow, these are not working very well at all, are they? Okay, well, let's try this one. Why did PowerPoint cross the road? To get to the other slide. Okay, that works. Following in the footsteps of one of my mentors, a professor at Concordia University, the sainted Reverend Dr. John Saleska. John Saleska always liked to begin a presentation with the stanzas of a hymn. Now, I cannot sing. I just want to read this to you. Some of you may be familiar with this hymn, Before You, Lord, We Bow. It was written by somebody you may know. Yeah, it's Francis Scott Key. Let me read to you stanzas 1 and 4, and especially I think stanza 4 is going to set the tone for us today. Before you, Lord, we bow, our God who reigns above and rules the world below in boundless power and love. Our thanks we bring in joy and praise, our hearts we raise to you, our King. Earth, hear your Maker's voice, your great Redeemer own. Believe, obey, rejoice, and worship him alone. Cast down your pride, your sin deplore, and bow before the crucified. So, digital signature. What's a signature? If you look it up in, is this the American Heritage? I don't forget which one this is. Here are the definitions of a signature. One's name as written by oneself. Or it could be that act of signing, or I like this definition, a distinctive mark, characteristic, or sound indicating identity. Today, your signature represents you. Your signature stands in your place. It's a very important thing, oftentimes legally binding. Your signature validates that document. And please don't get me started on the student who told me she couldn't sign her name on the driver's license because she can't write in cursive. There was a time, do you remember this, when we physically signed documents? That time is going by the wayside, I'm sorry to say. But signatures carry with them a lot of interest and weight, and we recognize some signatures. You recognize the signature of John Hancock. It's oftentimes used as a synonym for, put your John Hancock here for your signature. Can you tell this one? Abraham Lincoln, usually signed A. Lincoln. Here's a famous one, but if you've never seen it before, Donald Trump, exactly. If you've never seen Donald Trump's signature before, it looks, okay, wow. Yeah, okay? And if you'd like to buy this from me, see me afterwards. Anybody know who this is? I mean, you can read the name, but this is, yes, the former Queen Elizabeth. Elizabeth. And then what's the R for? It's for Regina, Latin for Queen. So this is Queen Elizabeth II. Today, we digitally sign documents. I said before we started, all this additional stuff we have to do. You know how long it took me to set up digital signatures on my machine? And how often it breaks? And how often I go, just sign with my hand. No, can't do that. Digital signatures are supposed to provide assurances about the validity and authenticity of a document. Hey, it really came from you. So what is it? It's an electronic encrypted stamp of authentication on digital information. How we do it, we don't care anymore. But this signature confirms that the information originated from the signee and not someone else. Question: has the Creator signed his creation? I'm speaking to the choir. You know that the Creator has signed. Now, did he do it in cursive? No. But there is boundless evidence that the Creator signed his creation. You're likely familiar with many people talking about this concept today, the signature in the cell. Although that phrase predates Stephen Meyer's book by the same title, the idea is the same. The signature in the cell. So, has God signed his creation? The answer is yes. Yes. I want to share with you in the first part of my presentation 3 evidences for this. And I'm going to bring in technology. So I'm going to use some analogies from technology to help us ultimately see how the Creator signed his creation. So 3 evidences. Number 1, in general, technology provides great evidence for creation, both directly and by analogy. What's my first? Human creativity. Why are human beings creative? Let's discover that. The painting above here, just a part of the image of a creation, was painted by Lucas Cranach. Lucas Cranach was a friend and colleague of Martin Luther during the 16th century, during the time of the Reformation. Human creativity provides strong evidence for creation. Evolution claims that natural processes produced everything. So why doesn't everything have the same level of creativity as human beings? Why isn't my dog as creative as my daughter? Answer: human beings, uniquely, specifically, were created in God's image for a special purpose. We were and are created in God's image. Genesis 1, 26 through 28. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the sky, over the livestock, and over all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Human beings were uniquely created. Now, I usually have to explain this to students, even some students that have a little bit of theological background. What does this word image mean? Image does not mean physical appearance. God, who revealed himself, God the Father, is spirit. There is no physical appearance there. Image has nothing to do with looking like God. Although my A students always say I look very angelic, image has to do with attributes and characteristics. On a small scale, why are human beings intelligent? Because we were created by a super intelligence, an omniscient God. Created in God's image, we reflect some of these attributes, including the desire to create things, and especially in the 21st century, technological tools. J.R.R. Tolkien, you know him. He made those movies, The Lord of the Rings. Oh, no, wait a minute, that was somebody else. He wrote the books, The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien was a committed Christian, and Tolkien said, human beings are sub-creators. Wasn't his word. Martin Luther said the same thing, and other people before him. Man is a creative being. He's a sub-creator. He shares in the creative power of God. Our creations bear our image and reflect what is in our hearts and souls. So what Tolkien was saying is, we are naturally sub-creators because we were created to sub-create. Fred Brooks, who is a computer scientist, no reason for you to know that name, but he talks in an essay about computer scientists as sub-creators. This is what he says. A little reflection shows us that the power to make things in imitation of our Maker is a gift for our sake, not his. As he scornfully reminded the people of Israel, he doesn't need our creative powers. The cattle on 1,000 hills are mine. If I were hungry, would I ask you? So we must conclude that the ability and call to create are given to us to enrich our lives and enable us to enrich other lives. Human creativity is just awesome. I am just dumbstruck by all the technology that exists today. But we're not the first generation to create technological tools. Anybody know what that thing is? Yeah, this is the Antikythera mechanism. Oh, thank you, that explains it. My youngest daughter, Valerie, was in Greece some time ago and actually got to see this. This was an artifact unearthed, drug out of the sea 2,100 years ago. It was dated at 100 BC. It was dug out of the sea 100 years ago. Okay? And people just say, what is this? We have no idea. And people just dismissed it. Oh, just some kind of... Once we really started investigating it, we discovered that this is a precursor to an analog astronomical calculator. This was designed to determine the tides, designed to determine where the sun would rise and set, etc. The Antikythera mechanism believed to be the earliest surviving mechanical analog device. Amazing. Creativity predates that, of course. This is one of the only known selfies at the time of Moses. And that's not Moses, that's Bezalel. Who is Bezalel, and what does the Bible say about him? Exodus chapter 31. The Lord said to Moses, "See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, carving wood, to work in every craft." God's temple was to be beautiful. The creative artistry of ancient peoples is amazing. Okay, time for a quiz. I'm a very amateur geologist, but I do like going into areas of Wisconsin, especially where we find Cambrian rocks. Here's some very unspectacular feldspar from the middle of Wisconsin. But when I uncovered this, I found growing inside it that object. You don't believe me. I'm a college professor. You don't believe me. Of course not. Now, here's a question. Did any of you see the production of whatever technology you use? Got a cell phone? Anybody see that being made? No, you did not. How do you know it was created by intelligent, creative human beings? This is the hallmark. Its creative complexity clearly shows it was created. My evolutionary colleagues want to say, oh, there's nothing significant about human creativity. I shouldn't call this a funny article. It was in Scientific American. It's called The Origins of Creativity, where the author tries to tell you how creativity evolved. Well, perhaps it was this, and perhaps it was that, and maybe it was this, and yeah, you know, it wasn't. Human beings were created by God to be creative. Creativity is a powerful evidence for creation. We are sub-creators, created in God's image. We bring forth other kinds of tools. God's signature in us is creativity. Second evidence, connecting technology to creation. Again, technology provides great evidence for creation, both directly and by analogy. This is my favorite evidence for the creation model of origins. So now I really have to stick to script. Otherwise, we're going to go far afield. Information content, what I call information theory. This is the Rosetta Stone. Question: did the marks on the Rosetta Stone appear naturally or via human design? You know the answer. But yet I'm going to tell you this is totally natural material. That's just stone. So didn't it have a natural origin like my evolutionary colleagues would like to suggest? No. Just because you have natural material doesn't mean it had a natural origin. The information content in our created artifacts shows the creative intelligence that was necessary in the design, building, and use. Here is more convincing evidence for creation that information can only come from intelligence. Information theory is a big, horrible thing that has been co-opted by some people and kind of twisted. As a graduate student, I took 3 courses in information theory, and it could be ugly. Let me tell you what information theory says in one sentence. Information only comes from intelligence. Oh, that was too difficult. Intelligence is necessary to create information. It's not startling. We all accept that. We all deal with that all the time. In the world of origins, one model, creation, accepts that. The other model denies that. Information can only come from intelligence. Let me use a low-tech example with you. Books are technology. Think about a book that you just read. You just read a good book? When you set it down, you think, wow, what a great author. I'd like to know more or read more that author wrote. And I come along and say, wait a minute, how do you know that book had an author? What do you mean? How do you know that book didn't suddenly self-assemble in a warm little pond in northern Wisconsin? And you say, I know that can't be true because there's no such thing as a warm little pond in northern Wisconsin. But beyond that, you say, ridiculous. Books point to authors. Why? Information theory. See, the information content points to the author. Now, I can't help it. I do a Chuck Norris stick in class, and if you have no idea who Chuck Norris is, you just have to ignore these things. But pick your favorite author. Even if you never met your author or saw your author, you know that book had an author. You know that book had an author. The signature of the author's information is all over that book. Now, if you're not familiar with Chuck Norris is a real person that has mythological superpowers. He combines Batman and Superman and puts both to shame. Chuck Norris, unlike mere mortals like you and I, Chuck Norris doesn't read books. He stares them down to get the information he wants. The corollary is Chuck Norris doesn't write books either. The words assemble themselves out of fear. And we laugh at that because that's ridiculous, yeah. All right? Let me prove to you that matter in and of itself has no meaning. Natural matter in and of itself has no meaning. That's what our evolutionary friends would want us to believe. They would say, oh yeah, DNA just kind of arose spontaneously out of matter. Matter has no meaning. Do you know what this is? It's a CAPTCHA. It's a QR code. This is a very low-tech secret code. When I was a little boy, I couldn't text the guy next to me, right, something about the teacher. You wrote notes. If the teacher found that note, you were in big trouble. So you wrote in a secret code, right? Yeah, okay. You see what's happening here? So the idea is you got a box, that's an E. You got a box with a dot in it, that's an R. Now, if you know the code, if you know the information, then that makes sense. If you don't know the code, it makes no sense at all. So if I apply the code to it, and codes are nothing but information, that said, run for your life. It's too late, don't do it now. You should have done it while you had the chance. It's too late now. What's the point? Matter cannot naturally develop its own meaning. Matter cannot spontaneously birth information. It is scientifically impossible. So, where did the information come from? Codes don't arise naturally. Information doesn't arise naturally. Where did the information come from? The information was put in to our technology by intelligent human beings. How does that help with creation? I think many of us see the direct connection, but let me delve a little deeper. The book of Proverbs, which you're familiar with, the wise saying of Solomon, spend some time in Proverbs 8. Get a good guide to Proverbs 8. I'm going to recommend Martin Luther and his commentary on Proverbs. And read through Proverbs 8, and when you get to verse 22, slow down. The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. In context, we're talking about wisdom. But wisdom is really just information. When you look carefully at that verse, possessed, the Hebrew really means fathered or created. And beginning of his work really means way. What the Spirit is telling us in Proverbs 8 is information theory. Information came from originally who? The omniscient God, the creator of heaven and earth. Is there evidence of technology? Yeah, is there evidence of technology? Very little. Is there evidence of a creator's signature in technology? You bet. You never met the person who created it, but you know full well that there were people who created it, and not monkeys or dogs or seahorses. Is there a signature of the Creator in us? In every one of the 30 billion cells in your body, the Creator's signature is all over it. It's the information content we call DNA. DNA is not just matter. It's not just funny carvings on a rock. It is information content. My notes say, move along, move along. So, third evidence, technology provides great evidence for creation both directly and by analogy. Evidence 3, the Trinitarian creative process. Human beings create things in a Trinitarian process. And I'm using the word Trinitarian there very purposefully. Yeah, let's just do it. Here's another painting by Lucas Cranach, meant to illustrate the concept of the Trinity. And sometimes I wonder if maybe the prohibition against graven images, taken to some extremes by some groups, shouldn't also be applied here. How do you represent God the Father? He's always got this flowing beard. Jesus, because he was incarnate and became one of us, we can represent that. The Spirit, and again, as a dove. But if there's one thing we know if you're a Christian, and that God is a Trinity. And that Trinity is also in us, in the way that we go about creating. We mirror God's nature in the creative act, because all acts of creation are threefold. Let me share with you what I call these threefold parts of creation, and then let me give you 2 examples. When somebody wants to create something, there are 3 activities. By the way, these are not linear. It's not like this one, and this one. They're all interwoven, which makes it extremely interesting. If you're going to create something, you need an idea, a mental model. For a computer scientist, that's a mathematical formalism. It's just an idea of what we want to do. The next aspect of creative acts is implementation. If you have an idea, that's good. And I've had plenty of students tell me, I had this great idea for the homework. Great. Can I see it? Oh, I didn't get that far. Well, you haven't done it then, have you? The second aspect of creation is implementation. Taking that mental model and actually instantiating it. I said I wasn't going to use, somebody said I wasn't going to use those words, right? Who was that? Instantiating, it just means do it in the real material. I've got to take it out of my brain and get it somewhere. And now you might think, well, we're all done. No, there's one more aspect of creation, and that's interaction. See, if you write a book and nobody reads it, the worst thing, I joked before this presentation that if there was nobody here, I'd still give it. No. Thank you for being here. The worst thing for a presenter is nobody out there. Right? All right. Let me give you 2 different examples of the creative activity. Let's start with low tech and go to medium tech. Low tech is an author creating a book. If you're an author creating a book, you have an idea. It's a novel. It's fiction. You put the characters in your brain and you roll with those for a number of days and weeks and months, and you see how the character is going to interact and what's the setting and who's the protagonist, and all these kinds of things. You have this in your mind. The first thing you do as an author is you don't just start writing. I mean, the only person who starts writing without an idea, those are college students. Oh, this is due in an hour. We'll start writing the thing. Right? So you have this idea. The second aspect is implementation. I've got this great idea. Now I have to put pen to paper. I got to put keystrokes to screen. I've got to implement it. And then finally, if you're an author, you hope people are going to read my book and interact with that. Glean something for that. See themselves in it. challenge themselves, maybe even send me $1 or $2. Okay? Yeah. All creative activities are Trinitarian in nature: idea, implementation, interaction. Medium tech, the same thing happens in the world of computer science. But what gets shortchanged in the world of computer science that we're familiar with is the idea. I drum this into my students. You have to understand the problem, and you have to understand the user, and you have to know why they're doing it. That's all the idea. The first step is not to run to your computer and start throwing Python code at the problem. That is not the first step. The first step is to think about the user's requirements and the user specification. And then we can move on to the second step, the implementation, where we design. We think about design patterns, and we actually create the code. And then comes our third step of interaction. Code that's never used by anybody really shouldn't be created at all. We then interact with it, and we make the judgment. Was this good? Was this bad? Was this useful? Was this beneficial? So I shared with you low-tech and medium-tech. My high-tech example is, do you know, as it turns out, we've discovered that clotheslines are very high-tech tools. Clotheslines, very high-tech tools. They were the first technology to embody the concept of online. People are groaning, have no idea why that might be. The human creative process is powerful evidence for creations. God's signature, his nature, is embedded in how we create also. Now, we know this. If you're looking for evidence of creation, it's everywhere. Romans 1, it is everywhere. In the physical world, it's the Creator's signature. In the biological world, the Creator's signature. In what we create, the Creator's signature comes through. Speaking of technology, you've seen this thing before, right? At every site and every app. Create an account? You know what? That's good practice. It really is. Because at the end, you're going to give an account. Okay, here's my segue. Now, I want you to remember that I began a few minutes late. Okay, you remember that, right? Okay, so first half, which is like 2/3. But now I need to do another third. I want to segue into something that I think is important to mention. Tech provides wonderful evidence of creation, yet there is a dark side to technology that we need to address. At the university level, I teach a graduate course called Vocation and Ethical Computing. I teach it to graduate students. And they always wonder, why is ethics a critical aspect of technology? I don't want this. I want to figure out how do I do JSON or some other strange thing. Why is technology, why is ethics a critical part of technology? Here's just one reason. Technology amplifies. Think about this. 50 years ago, some of you may even have been alive then. If you wanted to gossip about somebody 50 years ago, if you had a bit of salacious news, and you didn't care if it was true or false because you didn't like that person, you wanted to tell somebody, what did you do 50 years ago? You walked to the back fence, talked to your neighbor, walked across the street, talked to your neighbor, called at the phone, one person, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. What about today? You got a bit of salacious news you want to share about somebody. How many people know? Yeah. How many people does a tweet reach? 7? Yeah. Millions. Social media? Billions. Technology amplifies. Tech provides, what's it amplify? It amplifies human ideas and actions. All right. There is a dark side to tech. This is what I call the myth of neutral technology, or TMNT. The myth of neutral technology. Now, some of you may be at the right age that TMNT resonates with you. TMNT, in this case, does not, you don't know who that is, does not stand for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Instead, TMNT stands for the myth of neutral technology. You recall the classic icon from years gone by, right? A good ethical standard. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And today with tech, does it seem like it is hear lots of evil, see lots of evil, and speak lots of evil? Maybe so. Okay, Chuck had to come back and visit us. Sorry about that. If you look on your computer keyboard, I looked on my Mac and I looked on Windows PC, and at least the old ones that I have this. You'll see a key marked CTRL. That's the control key. Well, Chuck Norris doesn't have a control key on his keyboard. Chuck Norris is always in control. Nobody controls Chuck Norris. That's interesting. Who's in control of technology? The old incorrect adage used to be, well, you know, computers only do what they're programmed to do. That wasn't true in the 20th century. It's certainly not true in the 21st century. Who is in control of technology? Does technology manipulate us? Does technology manipulate us? Are we in control of our technology? Or is the technology in control of us? I'm going to state, and I know it's controversial, that rather than just a benign tool, technology has been created in certain ways. And much of it has been created to manipulate us. Consider this. I won't bore you with all the details. You know what Facebook is? The company is called Meta. Meta is the parent company of Facebook, a huge corporation, paying less taxes than you paid last year. A former vice president, here is his quote. He's been making waves after he spoke out about his, quote, tremendous guilt over growing the social network, which he feels has eroded, again, his words, the core foundations of how people behave by and between each other. In the beginning, there was not much thought given to the long-term negative consequences of developing this technology. His quote, I think in the back deep, deep recesses of our minds, we kind of knew something bad could happen. The first president of Facebook, this is Sean Parker. This is his quote. He says, basically, we purposely created something to be addicting. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. With each like and comment, Facebook is exploiting human psychology on purpose to keep users hooked on a social validation feedback loop. Parker added that this is exactly the kind of tech a hacker like myself would come up with. In 2014, Facebook purposefully experimented with nearly 700,000 Facebook users. They ran an experiment. In half of the group, they seeded their feeds with happy, joyful, uplifting items. The other half, 300,000 people, they seeded their feeds. They purposely added more things that were sad, depressing, evil. They wanted to see if there was such a thing as social contagion. Would the people fed the happy things? Would they be happier? Would they say happier things? And vice versa. Well, guess what? Is there? You bet there is. Is technology neutral? I have to admit with you that if you asked me this question 20 years ago, I would have likely said, because I hadn't thought about it deeply, sure. Technology is just a tool, right? It's like a hammer. Could it be used for good and bad? Oh, yes, absolutely. It could be used for good or bad, but it's just neutral. But I don't believe that. If we reflect God's image, our technology reflects our image. You've gone to Chicago Millennium Park. You've stood in front of the cloud gate. You know, everybody calls it the bean, that big illuminized reflective scene, and you see that. And yes, the tech reflects our image. Now, that shouldn't surprise us from a creation worldview perspective. Human beings were originally created good in a holy relationship with God. Human beings willfully separated themselves. They wanted to be God. They wanted to determine good and evil, and boy, had they. Let me make sure you understand. Technology could be created for good, and some is. Technology can be created for evil, and much is. And the corollary is good tech could be used for a bad purpose. Bad tech could be used for a good purpose. But you have to understand that no technology is neutral. This was very common before the year 2020. And then something happened that I'll explain later why we don't hear about this anymore. Lots of articles that had this headline: technology is not neutral. How online companies manipulate billions of minds. 8 billion people on planet Earth. Facebook claims approaching half of that number. I have no way to validate that. Let's say they only had 1 billion people. 1 billion people affected by social, and that's just Facebook. Nobody under 40 would claim they use Facebook, right? It's all the other social media things too. Now, let me make my case this way. Let's say even if you say, no, I don't believe you, technology really is just neutral. Fine. Even if technology were neutral, people are not neutral. People are not neutral. The same person can be good and the next moment evil. That's what Martin Luther called us, simultaneously saint and sinner. Human nature is not neutral. Sorry. Luther had this famous phrase, homo incurvatus in se. It's Latin. That's how he defined sin. Homo incurvatus in se. What does that mean? Humanity curved in on ourselves. Sin isn't human beings looking to God, it's human beings looking to themselves. I want you to notice this as I share some examples. Is this technology designed to make us focus on ourselves, or is it designed to make us focus on our neighbor and on God? Our creations bear our image. They reflect what's in our hearts and in our souls. I quoted Tolkien from you before. Here's the longer quote by Tolkien. Man, subcreator, the refracted light through whom is splintered from a single white to many hues, and endlessly combined in living shapes that move from mind to mind. So, of course, the white, pure light, that's God. And then we bear that image as sub-creators. Why can technology be either good or bad? We need to look no further than the biblical text to come up with that answer. Luke 6, Jesus speaking, no good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. As users, you've experienced what computer scientists call dark patterns. Let me explain to you what a dark pattern is. When you are working with a piece of technology, let's say you're browsing online, let's say you went online to look at a website, maybe you wanted to buy something online or look something up there. A dark pattern is an intentionally deceptive user interface. It's designed to fool you, to make you do something that you ordinarily would not do. The user interface has been purposely created to deceive you. All kinds of funny names for these things. Confirm shaming. What's that? You know, you try to do something. Oh, I had to write down an example from this one website. You know, it pop up, do you want to sign up for this? And you click no. And rather than immediately saying, fine, it says, you don't want to save money? Are you sure you don't want to sign up for our email list all the time? And then you got to say no again, then it does something else. Trick questions abound online. Opting out. It's a famous one, right? You got this, and now you have to opt out of it. Rather than saying, I wanted it, I want to opt in, you have to opt out. Or depthing. Depthing is one of those things, for example, if you want to buy something at Amazon, one click. One click, that's it. That's the opposite of our local lawyer. One click, that's it. You want to cancel an order? 11. Oh, yeah. Do you think that was on purpose? There's a great article. I will not share the whole thing with you. But basically what the article says is social media specifically preys on our sinful nature. It encourages us to turn in on ourselves. How many likes on your post? Oh, I don't have enough likes. Come on, like me. How many friends do I have? How many followers on Twitter? This is that dopamine feedback loop, right? Oh man, I need more. I need. Social media is designed around curving in on ourselves. Now, before you start throwing things, and this is where my wife would start throwing things too, it is possible to use bad tech for a good purpose. It is possible to use social media for good. It's hard. You've got to be vigilant and cognizant of what's going on, but it can be done. If you're a computer science student, you know what this is all about, the cult of technology. In many ways, tech has a cult. There are folks who are so involved in tech. There used to be the holy war between Macs and PCs. There's even commercials about it, right? And today it's just, it's the insiders who know the tech, and it's the rest of the unwashed masses. It is really a cult. I want to read you a quote from Albert Einstein's biographer. Thankfully, Einstein grew up without technology, but he knew what was out there and he knew what was coming. An education obsessed with science, technology, engineering, and math. Education obsessed with that today? You bet. This is what Einstein said. He said, that's wrong. An education obsessed with science, technology, engineering, and math to the exclusion or neglect of the humanities stems the growth and development of the human person on the one hand and unleashes technology without ethical constraints on the other. Pretty insightful, pretty predictive. Only a fool would advocate such an education, and I would dare say that Albert Einstein was no fool. You got to realize that tech can be a cult. The one thing that everybody wants to talk about when it comes to technology is, so what about artificial intelligence? It's a pretty easy subject. We can explain everything there is to know in about 5 minutes. No, that's incorrect. It's an extremely deep subject. So my 5-minute overview of AI certainly is going to leave you wanting more, but maybe that's the point. The person you see here died a few years ago, a British evolutionary physicist, Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, well known for his mathematical investigation into 11-dimensional physics of the Big Bang, and his popular level books, Why There Doesn't Need to Be a God and things like that. I don't remember the titles of them, sorry. But this worldly, brilliant mind was scared to death of AI. Artificial intelligence scared him to death. This is a quote from Stephen Hawking. The development of AI could spell the end of the human race. Now, why was he scared? Because at least Stephen Hawking realized the corrupt nature of human beings. Human beings, they're such nice people. They want everybody to get along. We love our fellow person, don't we, all the time? And we want to uplift them? No. AI, he knew the corrupt nature of people would want to make technology in their image. So imagine a superintelligence without morals. Yeah, that scared Stephen Hawking for sure. Before the thing that changed all this in the world, in 2018, there was a group of several dozen experts that got together, discussed this for a long time, and made a report. Do you see the title? The Malicious Use of Artificial Intelligence: Forecasting, Prevention, Mitigation. So they were concerned, hey, AI is at the point now, what if the bad guys use it? Well, I'm here to tell you the bad guys are already using it. They were concerned about new forms of cybercrime, physical attacks, political disruption. Yeah. Is artificial intelligence good or bad? It depends upon the attitude of the creator's heart. And for many people, it is going to be bad, isn't it? Now, how can I say that? Well, I think you know Matthew 15 also. Jesus speaking. What comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this defiles a man. For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murders, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person. Artificial intelligence is going to reflect the image of its creator. Now, if you know the creator of it, and you know that person, okay. But I dare say we're not going to. I need to tell you, some AI is good. As a matter of fact, you interact with lots of forms of AI all the time. Do you use a personal digital assistant? Do you use, hey Siri, hey Google, hey Cortana, all those kinds of things? You got an Alexa, those kinds of things that you don't, good for you. But that's AI. Do you have crash prevention technology in your car? Do you have adaptive cruise control? Do you have sensors? That's artificial intelligence. Good? I think so. But some isn't. You may know that one of the major thrusts of what's called strong AI research, two fields of artificial intelligence: weak, lots of good things, and strong, not so good. While some AI was created for good, consider the human equivalence goal a strong AI. Will we be able to create artificial life forms in our own image? A Christian with a creation worldview would say, no, human beings were created in the image of God, and we possess a soul or spirit that can't be captured physically or intellectually. Right? By the way, how do I know? How can I be absolutely certain that strong AI, human equivalence, was created for evil? To know that, you got to look at the goal. What's the goal of strong AI human equivalence research? Now, this is the goal. I did a little investigation. I was trying to find the earliest popular level count of strong AI research. This is a news article from 1987. The headline says, if you can survive beyond the next 50 years or so, you may not have to die at all, at least not entirely. The goal of strong AI research, the goal of the Human Equivalence Project, is to live forever. Interesting. Now, you may know this more popularly as transhumanism. Transhumanism is just one specific example of human equivalence and strong AI. Simply put, transhumanism is an intellectual movement that advocates for the transformation of human beings through technology. In other words, cyborgs. In other words, either implanting stuff in us, like 7 of 9 of Star Trek fame, or more specifically, downloading you, your virtual essence, into a computer system. Exactly. Transhumanism? Did you know? I talked about technology as a cult. You said, pfft. Do you know there's a church of artificial intelligence, a recognized 503C? Is that the right thing? Whatever it is, in the state of California. You're saying, oh, California. But don't worry, don't worry. This is Anthony Lewandowski, and this is what he says. His church is called the Way of the Future. Look them up. The Way of the Future's activities will focus on the realization, acceptance, and worship of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence developed through computerized hardware and software. We know the answer to this question. I want to tell you that much technology is designed to be addicting. Some of my students start sweating if they don't have their phones out all the time. But. Tech is designed, technology, some tech, is designed to bring out the worst in us. Here's a quote, Tristan Harris. Don't know, it's okay. Technology feels disempowering because we haven't built it around an honest view of human nature. We haven't come to grips with people are evil. Me too. Do you know what powers Satan's car? Speaking of technology. An infernal combustion engine. An infernal combustion engine. So when it comes to technology, when it comes to ethics in technology, we have to have an ethical standard. And this is something we have to bring to the table. As Christians, we have an ethical standard, and we can bring this to the discussion. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, is there anything worthy of praise, think about these things. If our tech creators did that during the idea phase of development, would we have the things we have today? No. Now, here is the beautiful part of it. Those people out there in the cult of tech, they are looking for something. Through technology, they're looking for eternal life. You have something to share with them. You can say, you know what? You think eternal life is in the future. Eternal life is now. And it doesn't depend upon a bug-ridden computer system. And it doesn't depend on anything that you do. Because, yeah, like me, you're evil also. It's already been done. What a message. Why are these people doing this with technology? It's the attitude of their heart. And they're missing something. And you know what? We got something for them. Let me end with, people always ask me, Okay. Tell me something practical. You've talked here for an hour and 10 minutes. Tell me something practical that I can take away and I can use for my neighbor. Here's my practical. This is my wife. My wife is an equine scientist. Equine, that's horses. This is one of our horses. If somebody asked my wife to share, why do you believe in creation? She wouldn't talk about information theory. She wouldn't talk about the cult of tech. She'd talk about the horse's hoof. And she could tell you 17 reasons why the horse's hoof could not have developed naturally and must have been created supernaturally. Here's my hot tip. You pick one thing. Pick one aspect of creation that interests you. It doesn't have to be mine. Something, and learn it. Learn it to the point where you can share it. And when they ask you, what about this fossil in Madagascar? You say, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that. But have you thought about this? That's the whole point, to get people thinking. Folks, I have well gone beyond my time. I appreciate your rapt attention. Dave's going to come up and give you the opportunity to sneak away before he asks if there are any questions. Okay.
Can we hear it for Gary, please?